Welcome to No One is Safe, a podcast about books, life, and where the truth can be stranger than fiction. I'm your host, Elizabeth Scozzari. Welcome back to Season 2, Episode 3. Do not ask me how many times I've tried to record that without fucking it up, because it is too many. But first of all, a massive thank you again, Cassie Alexander. You are amazing. Thank you so much for being here last week. I really, really appreciated it. I definitely got a lot out of our conversation, and I'm sure actually, that everyone else did as well. Today, we are getting back on our usual grind of, book review, story, mild distractions. But to start, I think most people would remember the phrase of secrets are no fun. Well, secrets are no fun unless you are spilling like gravy on my Thanksgiving plate. And yes, I am currently wearing and in love with my pumpkin spice. It's like a sweater, kind of. It has massive pockets that fit books. Massive pockets that fit books. I got it from MeUndies. Amazing. Highly recommend. Even though it's on a book, it is, they do underwear as well as lounge kind of, sweaters, clothes, things of that nature. Super comfy and fairly affordable. This has nothing to do with anything, so I will get back on track. I love Thanksgiving. I love Thanksgiving because I had 3 of them this year. 3. Like almost back to back to back. And then I had leftovers for like a week. And I love it. I love the turkey, the gravy, all of it. And as much as I love potatoes, not as much as I love the gravy. So anyway, I will try to stay focused. But I just Thanksgiving till we meet again. Okay, so speaking of spilling secrets, because that's what we are here to talk about, secrets and books. We haven't covered them yet. I think that we have because I've been reading through them. I know I've posted about them on my social media page, but Pretty Little Liars, I decided to revisit the series both in watching and in reading. I'm going to try to stay focused on the books. There are parallels obviously to be made, but starting with the first 2 books in the series, I'm going to try to lump them together because I know there's a lot. I believe that there's 16 altogether, and we're only going to talk about the first 8. So feel free to skip ahead if it's not of interest to you. But the first one, I put it down, gave it 5 stars. It was such an interesting book to kick off the series with. If you're a fan of the show, it is basically the first episode. However, there are some character differences and some character interactions that are different. And you can enjoy them as 2 separate stories. That is one thing I will say. Whether you liked the show or not, you can watch the show and read the book series. And they're 2 kind of different things. Each character, each girl, the main 4 girls, take on their own personalities. And while they're kind of related, you can read them as 2 separate storylines. Or 2 separate stories. The show and then the books. With that being said, in the first book, called Pretty Little Liars, you get to see each girl in their own unique voice and how different they are, the things that make them different, as opposed to seeing where they're similar or seeing the thread of similarities pulled through them. It is actually very clear how different each 4 of these girls are. The second book, Flawless, I gave 4 stars to, and you get more character development. You really get an in-depth look at processing problems as a young adult. Again, it's a young adult book, which, makes sense. Let's write for our audience, right? But you just get really caught up and you get sucked into like the life or death severity, the absolute drama, and just Sara Shepard keys into that mentality. So even though as an adult you're reading them, you still find yourself like, on the one hand, thinking like, this is not that big of a deal. Like if you just told an adult about this, it'd be fine. But also understanding why, like, I could never tell an adult. And it's just, I enjoyed it from that perspective. But it's also a slow burn mystery. Each book kind of draws out different aspects, focusing more on personality. Some focus more on personality and character development. Others just drop clues about the mysteries. And so going through the first 2 books, you kind of get a glimpse at that, how she structures things and how she writes them. And it is interesting because there are enough clues that you can figure stuff out, but also enough character development to keep you on your toes. You know, would this person do this? I'm not sure. And because we spend so much time in everyone's head, like Spencer's head, Arya's head, Hannah's head, Emily in the show, the book, it doesn't matter. I love Shay Mitchell as an actress. I cannot stand the character of Emily. Emily in the books and the show is just the fucking worst. Tied right up there with Allie. Anyway, I digress. But we spend so much time in each of their heads that sometimes, like, it'll be in the middle of a conversation and we'll just have spent pages rooted in this girl's head. And it kind of makes you wonder, like, what have they been doing for this long? Like, what, did they just freeze? Did anybody notice? Have they zoned out? Like, there's no real reactions, or no action because we're so engrossed in their thoughts. But it doesn't happen that often. And while it is, you know, okay, what are we doing as people here? Like, is there movement? Have we just all like frozen in time? The other side of that is it really does give you a good outlook and strong character development. So that definitely is present in these books. They're fun to read, I think. Although there are some moments where you're like, is this even... Like, the show had, this can't be high school kind of moments. Well, the book is even more intense. There's more crazy shit, both from parent perspectives as well as children, or like the kids' perspectives, the teenagers, whatever. But another really terrible transition. I should stop pointing them out. They might be better if I'd stop doing that, but I'm not going to. So, speaking of no real action, reactions, actions, just like kind of flatline. The next book on the list is The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. I gave it 3 stars. The premise is that Mariana is a therapist. She has this quasi-adopted niece who she's like very close with. Her name is Zoe. A friend of Zoe's goes missing. They find the body. She needs Mariana to come. She comes right away. She goes to the university that Zoe is attending, which is the same one that her and her husband had met and fallen in love at and built their love story. He's been dead about a year at this point. I think it's like a little over a year. Mariana is still in her grieving process, hasn't quite gotten out of it yet, but she is utterly certain that she has solved this murder based on some of the things Zoe has said, based on her own conversations with people, because she decides as a therapist she's qualified to go be a detective. And even though the police have said no, she is still hell-bent that this is the guy and just can't prove it. That is the whole premise of this book. That is it. It is Mariana's journey of finding out who killed Zoe's friend and like what is going on with this teacher and all of his beautiful girls. And I didn't love it. There were some crossovers. There's some crossovers between The Silent Patient and The Maidens, which I do love. I do love crossovers. Some of my novels have interacting characters. They're all independent of each other, but they all take place in Long Island. So there's, you know, that kind of crossover. And I love that. I am not knocking that. In The Silent Patient, which let's pause for a sidetrack to the sidetrack. Holy shit, 5-star book. Superbly written, the deftness, just everything about that book, the way everything comes together, every detail, phenomenal. Cannot recommend enough. 5-star book. Holy shit, I loved it. The fact that we get to see some characters from that pop back up or like where they're connected is great. I love a tie-in. My problem with The Maidens is that 1, I could not connect to the character of Mariana. She was terrible. And 2, there's a bunch of clues that don't go anywhere. So where in The Silent Patient, we have a bunch of like information that eventually all ties together. In The Maidens, you have a bunch of clues, like outright clue, information. And then it doesn't all come through. It doesn't all connect. There's stuff that for me felt like it was shoved in there or put in there or included just to be a misleading clue. And like it kind of, because of how well The Silent Patient was done, this one just kind of felt not forced, but it didn't have that same execution I think that I was looking for. Although I will say I started reading this one in paperback, had to hop in the car to drive back to Pennsylvania, and so I switched to audiobook, and the narrators did a beautiful job. I really enjoyed it. I think I just love when English people read to me, and by I think I mean I fucking know it, and it just fills my soul with joy. But both of them, for me, whether I was reading it or listening to it, it's still a 3-star book. Maybe if I hadn't read The Silent Patient, I would have liked it better because The Silent Patient set the bar really high for me for expectations. I read another one of his books that we'll talk about next week. I'm pretty sure it's next week. And that one I had better things to say. So maybe it was just this book that it didn't connect with. Those were the only books that I read in November. Like I said, last week we celebrated my grandmother's birthday, which was a ton of fun. I had my cousin's baby shower, which was also a lot of fun. I think this is a perspective that's changed for me over the past couple of years, especially in the last one. There's something really lovely about getting to see your family and how much love there is in a room. And I think taking a step back and moving to Pennsylvania and then getting to see them when I visit has really kind of solidified that, it's almost like you get used to the love in the room when you see it all the time. So when you take that step away and then come back, it's really heartwarming. So my grandmother's birthday party, my cousin's baby shower, I had 3 Thanksgiving dinners, as previously mentioned, and a shit ton of leftovers. So the last week of November, which is supposed to be all about training for this 5K that I'm doing in December, became shoveling turkey and pouring gravy down my throat because I fucking love gravy. My mom makes the best gravy. I digress. But I also had the honor and privilege of seeing Miss Evie Oddly perform live. She is a talented drag queen. You also might know her from the winner of season 11 of RuPaul's Drag Race, as well as a contestant in All Stars 7. But her performance, her live show is just out of this world. I literally laughed out loud and almost peed my pants a little bit because she's just so funny. She is so unique, such an original, and she is absolutely worth going to see her perform. If you have not seen her yet, definitely one of my favorite performances I've ever been to. It was in Philly. Or her show was in Philly. While I was in Philly for her show is where I had my no one is safe moment. It came to life. Evie Oddly gave me life, did not give life to this story. This story actually came together at a very large coffee shop. Usually coffee shops are always described as small and quaint. This one was massive. It had, when you came in, the door was on a corner. So when you came in, there was this little hallway of tables, kind of, not hallway's not the right way to say it, but the giant room behind it was partitioned by this gorgeous wooden shelf with plants and books for sale, and it was aesthetically absolutely beautiful. It could have walked off the pages of Better Homes and Gardens, just gorgeous. And through this little passageway there was the counter that had all these baguettes and pastries. Their coffee, though, this is a show about books and about weird shit that I end up finding myself into, but this coffee was so fucking good. I would go back to Philly just to go here for the coffee. Amazing coffee, delightful baguettes. You order from the counter and then you can wrap around to this massive, it's a massive space. It's beautifully decorated, but this massive space. And so sitting at a table, me in my early 30s, at the time I was 33, now, I'm 34, look at me go, and my guy in his 40s, we're talking over our coffees like 2 Yentas, and I don't even remember what was said. It was a joke that both of us had heard and probably said thousands of times, having come from the same group of friends. It's where we met. Well, before I left and before he was banished. It makes sense that, we have this commonality or this joke that was passed around that group, and, both of us picked it up, or at least I picked it up. As it turns out, he was there for the origin of this joke, the story that would later be told thousands upon thousands of times on trips down memory lane, the joke that came out of it. It's an innocuous comment kind of joke thing. I said it, and you could tell it was the Abbott and Costello bit. Who's on first? What's on second? I don't know who's on third. he just spit out a response. And I looked at him because I had never heard it. And again, it's such like a throwaway comment, and it's been so long that I don't even remember what specifically it was. But I looked at him because I was like, I had never heard that part of it. And I said, I was like, that doesn't make sense. Like, what are you talking about? And he's like, well, did no one tell you the other side of the story? And I, true to Aunt form, picked up my coffee and was like, do tell. Because I love to understand how things work. In my opinion, there's a difference between like gossip for the sake of shit talking people and spreading rumors, and also the way my brain works of like, I would like all of the information. I would like to understand. I would like to see the connections. I'd like to build a whole story, a whole backstory. If you know it, tell me. I love it. I live for a story, to create them, to read them, to listen to them. Anyway, so he tells me the rest of the story that I had never heard before, and it was wild. And so like a million little receptors in my brain fired off at once, each trying to like find its correlating friend, piece together this information. And so now I have like a bigger picture. Meanwhile, we finish up breakfast. We're walking through Philly. We get back to the hotel, and I turned and I was like, I need a minute. And I like pull out a pen and I start taking notes for story ideas. Nothing to do with like these people specifically, but like just story ideas. And as I'm like taking notes and stuff, there's the other part of my brain that's like, but wait, this. And so I start mapping out like the real life story and like little pieces that I know that I've overheard over time, or that like this person secretly confided in that person and that person said something to me, or I heard this person tell that person. And so there's two sides of this notebook, one with like a fucking map of like this group of friends and who's been in everybody's business, and then actual story ideas that are unrelated. Or at least unrelated in the sense of like, you know, you hear someone say, oh, there's a pink elephant in the room, so you go home and write a story about a pink elephant, but really it's not a pink elephant. It's like a metaphor for female sex organs and the importance of gay culture and queer communities. If you want to write that story, please send it to me. I will gladly read it. My email is on my website. It's also probably somewhere in the show notes, but it's elizabethscozzariauthor@gmail.com. Anyway, I made a bunch of notes. I'm looking at the story that I'm creating, like all these different moving parts, and like some real life fucking chaotic web stuff. And when we got back from Philly, I sat down and started writing this story, my No One Is Safe moment, which is a collection of short stories, all with puzzles, pieces, or time in the title. They're all interconnected. One is written in like a Shakespearean play format, but it's a good reminder that no one is just one-dimensional. No one is just an individual. Sometimes they're a whole bunch of fun. Or just an asshole. I mean, that works too. There was a joke in there that I definitely fucked the delivery of, but either way, never is someone just one thing, and in my world, no one is safe. So I will see you next week. Thank you so much for listening to No One Is Safe. This podcast means so much to me. If you've enjoyed it, please consider liking, subscribing, sharing, and leaving a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. For more content or more information on me, please follow my Instagram page at Elizabeth Scozzari Author and check out my website, elizabethscozzari.com. Thank you so much again, and go out and have a wonderful day.